Deep in the mist-shrouded forests of Japan's mountain peaks, something watches from the shadows, a creature with piercing eyes, a face both human and avian, and wings that rustle like dried leaves in the wind. For centuries, locals whispered of its presence, a being that could vanish into the treetops or descend with terrifying speed, striking fear into the hearts of those who dared to wander too far into its domain. This is the Tengu, one of Japan's most enigmatic and enduring mythological figures, a being whose story defies simple labels. What begins as a tale of a feared demon, a trickster lurking in the wilderness, unfolds into something far more extraordinary, a journey of redemption, power, and even divinity. At first glance, the Tengu might seem like just another monster from folklore, a cautionary tale to keep children from straying into the woods. But dig deeper, and you'll uncover a transformation so profound it reshaped an entire culture's understanding of the supernatural. How does a creature once reviled as a harbinger of chaos become revered as a guardian, a teacher, even a god? That's the mystery we're unraveling today. The Tengu's evolution isn't just a story about a mythical being. It's a reflection of humanity itself, our fears, our ambitions, and our endless capacity to reinterpret the world around us. Picture this, a being born from the darkest corners of legend, feared for its cunning and wrath, yet somehow, over time, it earns respect, then reverence. The Tengu's path mirrors the way cultures grow and change, how the unknown becomes the familiar, and how even the most terrifying forces can be harnessed, understood, and ultimately honored. By the end of this journey, you'll see the Tengu not just as a figure of myth, but as a symbol of transformation, one that challenges us to rethink the boundaries between monster and deity, chaos and order. So let's step into the shadows of Japan's ancient forests and discover how a bird demon became a god. Long before the Tengu became the winged, red-faced figures of later folklore, they first appeared in Japan's oldest written records as something far more ambiguous, celestial omens cloaked in mystery. The Nihon Shoki, a chronicle compiled in the year 720, describes them not as bird-like demons but as heavenly dogs, creatures descending from the skies to bring chaos. These early Tengu were portents of disaster, their appearances tied to political upheavals and natural calamities. A nobleman's death, a sudden eclipse, even the fall of a dynasty. Each event whispered to be the work of these shadowy beings. But here's the twist, they weren't originally Japanese. The concept of the Tengu likely traveled from China, where the Tiangu, a fiery comet or meteor, was seen as a celestial hound that devoured the sun or moon during eclipses. When this idea reached Japan, it transformed. The Tengu shed its purely astronomical roots and took on a more personal, menacing role. Instead of just a cosmic disturbance, they became tricksters interfering in human affairs. Imagine a world where unexplained misfortunes, failed crops, wars, even madness, were blamed on unseen forces with a taste for mischief. That's the Tengu's early legacy. But what's fascinating is how quickly their story began to shift. Even in these ancient texts, there are hints of something more complex at work. Some accounts describe them not just as bringers of disaster, but as punishers of the arrogant, targeting corrupt monks or prideful rulers. This duality, destroyer yet moral enforcer, planted the seeds for their later evolution. By the 8th and 9th centuries, the Tengu's form started to change too. The dog aspect faded, replaced by avian features, a shift some scholars tie to indigenous beliefs in mountain spirits and kami. Japan's dense forests, with their eerie whispers and sudden cries, demanded a creature that belonged to the wild, not just the heavens. The Tengu adapted, growing wings and talons, becoming as much a part of the land as the myths that birthed them. This wasn't just a change in appearance, it marked the beginning of their deep connection to Japan's spiritual landscape, setting the stage for their journey from feared specters to revered protectors. By the 9th century, the Tengu's transformation was well underway, no longer just a celestial dog, but a creature caught between worlds, its form twisting to reflect the fears and fascinations of a changing Japan. The shift from canine to avian wasn't random. It was a collision of cultures, religions, and the raw power of nature itself. Buddhist monks brought tales of the Karora, divine birds of Indian myth, fierce creatures with golden wings and serpent-slaying beaks. These weren't just stories, they were visual spectacles painted on temple walls and woven into rituals. Imagine a rural farmer already wary of the forests, hearing these tales and then glimpsing something dark and winged in the treetops. Was it a Karora? A demon or something new entirely? The Tengu absorbed these influences, its once vague celestial form sharpening into something distinctly bird-like, a hybrid of reverence and terror. But another force shaped the Tengu's evolution. The Yamabushi, mountain ascetics who trained in the very forests the creature haunted. These monks didn't just fear the Tengu, they sought it out, believing the mountains were a bridge between the human and spiritual realms. Their accounts are chilling encounters with crow-like figures watching from cliffs, or shadows that moved too fast to be natural. Some Yamabushi even claimed the Tengu taught them secret techniques, blurring the line between monster and mentor. Here's where folklore takes a fascinating turn. The Tengu's bird-like form wasn't just about fear. Crows and ravens are clever, adaptable, symbols of both death and wisdom across cultures. The Tengu, now with its hooked nose and piercing eyes, became a mirror for humanity's own duality, capable of destruction, yes, but also of profound insight. The 12th century solidified this shift. Picture a battlefield monk, his prayers interrupted by the flap of wings, looking up to see a red-faced, long-nosed figure perched on a pine branch. This wasn't the vague terror of earlier eras. This was the Tengu as we recognize it today. Art from this period shows the creature fully avian, its human-like hands clutching a fan or staff, a mischievous glint in its eyes. The fan itself is telling, a symbol of authority, used in rituals to summon wind or banish evil. Even as it retained its reputation for chaos, the Tengu was gaining tools of order. This duality wasn't accidental. Japan's medieval period was a time of war and upheaval, where old beliefs clashed with new power structures. The Tengu, neither fully demon nor deity, embodied that tension, a reminder that even the wildest forces could be harnessed if approached with respect. The most striking detail, the Tengu's long nose, a feature that emerged during this era. Some scholars tie it to the masks of mountain priests, while others see a parody of arrogant aristocrats. Either way, it's a masterstroke of myth-making, a visual jab at human pride, a beak-like protrusion mocking those who thought themselves above nature's laws. The Tengu, once a celestial dog, had become something uniquely Japanese, a trickster, a teacher, and a warning, all wrapped in feathers and folklore. Its evolution wasn't just about changing looks, it was about a culture wrestling with its own contradictions, finding meaning in the spaces between fear and reverence. Not all Tengu are created equal. In fact, Japanese folklore divides them into two distinct classes, each with its own appearance, powers, and purpose. At the top of this mystical hierarchy stand the Daitengu, or Great Tengu, beings so revered they border on divine. Picture a towering figure with crimson skin, a humanoid face, and a nose so long it nearly resembles a beak, an exaggerated feature that's become their trademark. But this isn't just a quirk of design. That elongated nose symbolizes wisdom, a physical manifestation of their deep knowledge and spiritual insight. These are the Tengu who command storms, who whisper secrets to monks in mountain retreats, and who guard sacred sites with an almost paternal intensity. They dress like Yamabushi, the ascetic mountain priests, their robes flowing as if woven from the very mists of the forests they inhabit. Legends describe them wielding magical feather fans, capable of summoning gales with a single flick, a power that reflects their dual nature as both protectors and punishers. In stark contrast, the Kotengu, or lesser Tengu, embody the wild, untamed side of these creatures, with crow-like faces, razor-sharp talons, and wings built for silent flight. They're the foot soldiers of Tengu society, often depicted as servants or messengers to their Daitengu masters. Where the great Tengu meditate in secluded shrines, the Kotengu dart through the treetops, their shrill cries echoing through valleys. They're tricksters by nature, prone to mischief, stealing crops, leading travelers astray, or even snatching hats right off people's heads just for amusement. Yet even these lesser beings hold a sacred role. In some tales, they serve as enforcers of cosmic balance, punishing those who disrespect the mountains or exploit the weak. Their bird-like forms tie them to Shinto beliefs about nature's raw, unfiltered power, a reminder that not all wisdom comes in human-shaped packages. The dynamic between these two classes reveals something profound about how Japanese folklore views hierarchy and transformation. The Daitengu, with their human-like features and scholarly aura, represent the pinnacle of spiritual refinement, while the Kotengu embody the chaotic forces that must be mastered on the path to enlightenment. Yet neither could exist without the other. The great Tengu need the lesser to carry out their will, and the lesser, in turn, aspire to the wisdom of their superiors. Some stories even suggest that a Kotengu, through centuries of discipline, can evolve into a Daitengu, mirroring humanity's own potential for growth. This duality isn't just about power, it's a metaphor for the tension between our base instincts and higher aspirations, between the wildness of nature and the order of civilization. The Tengu, in all their forms, hold up a mirror to the human condition, asking us, which path will we choose? Perhaps nowhere is the Tengu's duality more striking than in medieval Buddhist tales, where these once feared creatures become symbols of spiritual downfall. Picture a devout monk deep in meditation, striving for enlightenment only to be confronted by a winged figure offering shortcuts to power. This was the Tengu's new role, not just a forest spirit, but a tempter of souls, embodying the very dangers Buddhist practitioners sought to overcome. The Konjaku Monogatari, a 12th century collection of stories, paints vivid scenes of Tengu appearing as fallen priests, their once holy robes now fused with feathers, their human faces distorted by beaks, a physical manifestation of corrupted wisdom. What made these tales so compelling was their psychological depth. The supernatural abilities the Tengu offered levitation, mind reading, even immortality, weren't mere fantasy. They represented real pitfalls on the path to enlightenment. Buddhist teachings warned against clinging to such powers, seeing them as distractions from true awakening. The Tengu, with their crow-like cunning, personified this temptation. In one famous account, a proud monk boasting of his spiritual achievements finds himself challenged by a Tengu disguised as an old wanderer. When the monk scoffs, the stranger leaps into the sky, wings bursting from his back, revealing the hollowness of the monk's pride. These stories served as cautionary tales. Enlightenment couldn't be stolen like a trinket or won through arrogance. Yet there's fascinating nuance here. Some texts suggest certain Tengu weren't evil, but trapped former monks so obsessed with miraculous powers they became something neither human nor divine. The Hike Monogatari describes a Tengu weeping over its fate, a poignant reminder that corruption often begins with good intentions. This complexity transformed the Tengu from simple villains into mirrors for human weakness, their beaks and wings becoming symbols of what happens when spiritual ambition curdles into vanity. What's especially telling is how these Buddhist narratives borrowed from older folklore while reshaping it. The Tengu's flight, once just a trait of bird demons, now symbolized the dangers of spiritual pride, soaring too high. Their mountain homes, previously seen as wild places, became testing grounds for ascetics. Even their famous long noses took on new meaning, not just tools for mocking arrogance, but literal representations of those who stick their noses where they don't belong in spiritual matters. This evolution showcases how fluid mythologies can be, adapting to serve new cultural needs. Where earlier eras feared Tengu as bringers of disaster, medieval Buddhists feared what they represented, the corruption within. The tales warned that true demons weren't just in the forests, but in the human heart, and that the path to enlightenment required confronting both. The year 1180 was one of terror for Japan's nobility, as whispers spread through the imperial court of a horror no one could explain: vanishing children, snatched away by unseen forces in the dead of night. The incident, recorded in ancient texts as the Tengu no Koto, or Affair of the Tengu, wasn't just folklore, it was a full-blown moral panic that gripped the capital. Noble families reported their sons disappearing without a trace, some vanishing from locked rooms, others plucked mid-stride from palace gardens. Witnesses spoke of dark wings blotting out the moon, of shrill cries echoing from the treetops. The culprit, according to the terrified elite Tengu, punishing human arrogance by stealing the next generation. What made this hysteria so potent was its timing. Japan was in turmoil, the Genpei War raging between the Terra and Minamoto clans, natural disasters striking with eerie frequency. In such chaos, people needed an explanation for the unexplainable, and the Tengu, already shapeshifters and tricksters, fit perfectly. But here's where history gets murky. Some scholars suggest these abductions might have been political kidnappings disguised as supernatural events, a way to destabilize rival families without overt blame. Others point to mass hysteria, where every missing child became proof of Tengu involvement, fueled by the era's deep superstitions. The response was swift and extreme. Exorcists performed elaborate rituals, waving sacred gohei wands and chanting sutras to banish Tengu influence. Temples erected talismans inscribed with protective symbols, while nobles dressed their children in red, a color believed to repel the creatures. The most striking detail: accounts describe Tengu confessors, individuals claiming to have been abducted and returned, their stories eerily similar to modern alien abduction narratives. They spoke of being carried to mist-shrouded peaks, forced to memorize strange texts or endure bizarre trials before being released with warnings about human corruption. This incident reveals more about medieval Japan than it does about mythical creatures. The Tengu became a canvas for projecting societal fears of war, of moral decay, of losing control. Their abductions mirrored very real anxieties about the vulnerability of heirs in a time of political instability. And just like that, the Tengu evolved again, no longer just forest spirits or spiritual tempters, but existential threats capable of unraveling the social order itself. The line between myth and reality blurred so completely that, for a brief, terrifying moment, Japan's elite truly believed winged demons were stealing their future. One of the most enduring legends of the Tengu's influence on Japanese culture centers around Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a warrior whose name still echoes through the halls of history. As a child, Yoshitsune was sent to Kurama Temple, a secluded mountain sanctuary shrouded in mist and mystery. It was here, according to centuries of folklore, that the young prodigy didn't just train under human masters, he was taught by the Tengu themselves. The stories say that deep in the temple's shadowed forests, the Daitengu king Sojobo took Yoshitsune under his wing, literally and figuratively. Imagine the scene: a boy barely in his teens, practicing sword forms under the watchful gaze of a crimson-faced, long-nosed figure perched on a cedar branch, his wings rustling with each critique. This wasn't just imaginative storytelling, it was a fusion of martial pride and spiritual reverence. The techniques attributed to Yoshitsune: lightning-fast footwork, impossible leaps, strategies that seemed to bend the rules of warfare, were said to be gifts from the Tengu. Sojobo didn't just teach him to fight, he taught him to think like the wind, to anticipate an enemy's moves as if reading their very soul. In one famous tale, Yoshitsune duels the Tengu king on a moonlit bridge, their wooden swords clashing faster than the human eye could follow. When the boy finally lands a strike, Sujobo laughs, a sound like crow's caws and rolling thunder, and declares him ready. What makes these legends so compelling is how they blur the line between history and myth. Yoshitsune was very real, a military genius who helped shape Japan's destiny during the Genpei War. But by weaving Tengu into his origin story, folklore elevated him from a brilliant tactician to something almost supernatural. It's no coincidence that his most famous battles involve maneuvers his enemies deemed impossible, as if he had otherworldly guidance. The Tengu connection also served a deeper purpose. It framed his skills as divine gifts rather than mere human talent, justifying his victories as preordained. But Yoshitsune wasn't the only one touched by Tengu wisdom. Across Japan, martial arts lineages whispered of secret techniques passed down from these winged mentors. The Kurama Ryu swordsmanship tradition proudly traces its roots to Yoshitsune's training, while other schools speak of mountain hermits disguised Tengu, who tested wandering warriors with riddles and sparring matches. Even today, some classical martial arts kata contain movements said to mimic Tengu postures, their stances wide and grounded like birds poised to take flight. The psychological power of these legends can't be overstated. For samurai, the Tengu represented an ideal, warriors who transcended human limits without losing their connection to the spiritual world. To train like Yoshitsune was to aspire to that balance, fierce yet wise, disciplined yet instinctive. Even now, visitors to Kurama Temple can walk the same paths where the boy warrior supposedly trained, the air thick with the weight of stories. Whether fact or fiction, the Tengu's role in these tales reminds us that sometimes the greatest teachers wear feathers, not robes. Among the Tengu's most awe-inspiring traits is their mastery of shape-shifting, an ability that blurs the line between predator and priest. Legends describe these creatures assuming the forms of wandering monks, their feathered wings hidden beneath tattered robes, their beaks disguised by the shadows of straw hats. But this wasn't mere mimicry, it was psychological warfare. Picture a village where a new ascetic arrives, preaching strangely compelling sermons that twist scripture just enough to sow doubt. By the time the villagers realize their guest's eyes glow faintly red in candlelight, the damage is done, families feuding, crops withering, all because a Tengu fancied a game. The most chilling accounts involve them impersonating deceased loved ones, exploiting grief to manipulate the living. Yet there's a curious duality here. Some tales tell of Tengu adopting human form to guide lost travelers or expose corruption, proving their transformations could serve justice as easily as chaos. Wind manipulation stands as another signature power, one that reveals their deep connection to nature's raw forces. A Daitengu's feather fan isn't just ceremonial. A single sweep can summon gales strong enough to uproot ancient pines or hurl boulders like pebbles. In one Edo period scroll, a Tengu defies an entire army by swirling fallen leaves into a razor-edged cyclone, turning the battlefield into a slaughterhouse of airborne debris. But this ability isn't solely destructive. Mountain priests speak of benevolent Tengu conjuring breezes to cool fevered brows or clear paths through blizzards for stranded pilgrims. The wind becomes a metaphor for their capricious nature, sometimes a gentle whisper, other times a howling reckoning. Then there's the Tengu no Kakuramino, the legendary invisibility cloak woven from shadow and moonbeams. Unlike Western tales of transparent fabrics, this enchantment was said to wrap the wearer in a perception-distorting haze, not vanishing, but becoming unremarkable, like a stone you've passed 100 times without noticing. Thieves coveted rumors of these cloaks, though folklore warns that any human attempting to use one would find their senses scrambled, lost in a world where even their own hands seemed foreign. The irony is palpable. A tool meant to conceal the supernatural could render mortals invisible even to themselves. Fire dances at their command too, but not the tame flames of hearths or lanterns. Tengu kindled fires burn blue at the edges, consuming only what they choose. A scroll might blacken to ash while the silk pouch beside it remains untouched. There's a famous kabuki play where a Daitengu punishes a corrupt official by setting his ledger ablaze mid-trial, the fiery characters floating in the air to expose every hidden bribe. Such precision hints at a deeper truth. The Tengu's powers often reflect a karmic balance, their magic serving as nature's scalpel rather than its sledgehammer. Perhaps most unsettling is their teleportation, not the instantaneous poof of Western magic, but a disorienting slippage between spaces. A traveler might glimpse a winged figure atop a distant torii gate, blink, and find it suddenly beside them, smelling of pine resin and copper. These moments rupture reality's fabric, forcing humans to confront how little they truly perceive. It's no wonder these abilities inspired both terror and reverence. The Tengu weren't just breaking rules, they were revealing how flimsy those rules had always been. Yet every power carries limitations woven into folklore like hidden clauses. A Tengu can vanish from sight, but holy bells fracture their illusions. They might ride the wind for leagues, yet crossing running water saps their strength. These vulnerabilities anchor them in a world of balances, ensuring their supernatural arsenal never reduced them to mere bogeymen. Instead, they became something far more compelling, beings whose very existence asked unsettling questions about humanity's place in a world where the impossible was just another layer of the real. The samurai of feudal Japan didn't just fear the Tengu, they emulated them. There's a striking irony in how these warriors, who prized discipline and order, drew inspiration from creatures once synonymous with chaos. The connection runs deeper than shared mountain habitats. It's woven into the very aesthetics of warfare. Take the tengai, those sweeping metal ornaments adorning samurai helmets, curved, beak-like protrusions framing the warrior's face like a stylized echo of the Tengu's infamous nose. This wasn't accidental. Wearing these crests invoked the Tengu's uncanny perception, a silent boast that the warrior beneath could see battles unfold with supernatural clarity. Armorers even crafted masks resembling the Daitengu's crimson visage, their exaggerated features meant to unnerve opponents while channeling the creature's strategic genius. The Hike-monogatari, Japan's epic chronicle of clan warfare, cements this relationship in ink and legend. Its pages depict Tengu not just as observers of war, but as active participants in its unfolding drama. In one pivotal scene, a spectral Tengu appears to a general on the eve of battle, whispering tactics that defy conventional logic, flanking maneuvers mimicking the way wind eddies around cliffs, ambushes timed to the rhythm of crow calls. What makes these passages remarkable is how they blur the line between myth and military doctrine. The strategies attributed to Tengu often mirror real historical tactics used by famed commanders, suggesting folklore was a way to encode battlefield wisdom in memorable, almost sacred terms. But the Tengu's influence extended beyond metaphor. Secret scrolls circulated among elite warrior schools, purportedly transcribed from Tengu teachings. The Togakyo Ryu ninja tradition, for instance, includes techniques for Tengu no jutsu, using mountainous terrain to vanish like the creatures themselves, or scaling trees with an agility that earned practitioners the nickname human crows. Even the revered sword Saint Miyamoto Musashi referenced Tengu in his writings, comparing their fluid movements to the ideal swordsman's form. There's a telling proverb among kendo masters: a novice fears the blade, a master fears the Tengu's shadow, implying that true skill lies in anticipating the unpredictable. This warrior-Tengu symbiosis reveals a cultural paradox. The samurai class, which upheld strict Bushido codes, simultaneously revered a being that represented trickery and unorthodoxy. Perhaps that's the point. The Tengu embodied the parts of war that couldn't be confined to honor or ritual. Their long noses didn't just mock arrogance, they symbolized the ability to scent hidden opportunities to adapt when rigid plans failed. When a general outflanked an enemy using terrain everyone else deemed impassable, or when a daimyo won a siege through psychological warfare rather than brute force, those victories carried a whisper of winged guidance. Even today, the word Tengu-ji describes a move so brilliantly unexpected it seems otherworldly, proof that these bird demons still soar through Japan's martial imagination. Rising north of Kyoto like a rippled sea of cedar and stone, Mount Kurama isn't just a mountain, it's a living shrine to the Tengu, where every rustling branch and trickling stream whispers their legacy. The air here feels different, thick with the scent of centuries-old rituals and something wilder, older. At the heart of this sacred landscape stands Shugendō, the Daitengu king, his legend so deeply carved into these slopes that pilgrims still feel his presence in the shudder of wind through the temple's towering gate. Follow the moss-lined path upward, past stone lanterns weathered by 800 years of rain, and you'll find yourself walking the same trails where Minamoto no Yoshitsune once trained, where history and myth blur into a single, breathless narrative. The mountain itself seems designed for Tengu lore. Ancient cedars twist skyward like frozen bolts of lightning, their gnarled roots cradling miniature shrines where offerings of sake and rice cakes appear as if by magic. Halfway up the trail, a massive camphor tree stretches its limbs over a peculiar rock formation, the Tengu's Nose, a protruding crag said to be the very spot where Shugendō tested young Yoshitsune's balance by having him stand one-legged atop the narrow stone. Even now, visitors place coins along the rock's edge, a silent plea for the Tengu king's favor. The higher you climb, the more the atmosphere shifts. Sunlight filters through the canopy in fractured beams, illuminating patches of mist that dance like ghostly wings. By the time you reach Kurama-dera Temple's crimson lacquered main hall, perched precariously on the mountainside, it's easy to believe the tales of Yamabushi monks spotting feather-clad figures watching from the cliffs. These mountain ascetics still perform chusha rituals here, ceremonies passed down through generations, where fire and breath become offerings to the Tengu. Picture a moonlit clearing, the air vibrating with the drone of conch shells as white-robed monks whirl in precise patterns, their guttural chants echoing off the stones. They carry gohei wands tipped with zigzag paper streamers, mimicking the Tengu's control over wind and lightning. Some even wear tengai masks during the rituals, their features elongated into eerie, beak-like curves, becoming vessels for the very spirits they honor. The most sacred of these rites happen at Oku no Win, the inner sanctuary deep in the mountain's heart, a cavern where natural rock formations resemble winged figures, illuminated only by flickering oil lamps. Here, the boundary between worshipper and worshipped thins to a hair's breadth. Modern visitors might not witness full Yamabushi ceremonies, but the mountain still breathes with Tengu energy. The annual Kurama Fire Festival turns the slopes into a river of flame, with locals carrying massive torches said to purify the path for Shugendō's spectral procession. Hikers often report strange phenomena, vanishing footsteps on foggy trails, the sudden chill of invisible wings brushing past, or the uncanny feeling of being watched from above. The temple's caretakers tell of cameras malfunctioning near certain rocks, their lenses fogging with no logical cause, as if the Tengu themselves reject the modern world's attempts to capture their domain. What makes Kurama unique is how effortlessly it straddles the sacred and the tangible. Unlike mythic locations lost to time, this mountain remains vibrantly alive, a place where you can sip matcha at a tea house while listening to monks debate whether last winter's avalanche was natural or the work of a displeased Daitengu. The trails are dotted with wooden plaques depicting Shugendō in his full glory, crimson-faced, white-haired, his gilded fan raised as if mid-spell. These aren't mere decorations, they're wards and welcome signs all at once, acknowledging that the Tengu may be unseen but are never absent. Even the local amamori charms sold at the temple carry a distinct flavor: tiny cloth pouches embroidered with crow feathers, promising protection from foolishness and falling, a nod to both the Tengu's wisdom and their penchant for mischief. As dusk settles over Kurama, the mountain seems to exhale centuries of stories. Lanterns flicker to life along the paths, their glow painting the cedar trunks in shifting patterns like moving ink. Some say if you listen closely at the hour when day surrenders to night, you might hear the faintest echo of wooden swords clashing, a ghostly training session forever imprinted on the mountain's memory. Whether you come seeking history, spirituality, or just the thrill of standing where legends took flight, Mount Kurama offers this unshakable truth: the Tengu aren't confined to scrolls and folktales. There in the creak of the trees, the taste of the iron-rich spring water, the way the wind sometimes sounds suspiciously like laughter, and if you're very lucky or perhaps very perceptive, you might just earn a feather-light touch on your shoulder, the briefest acknowledgement that the watchers in the trees haven't forgotten how to welcome those who still believe. The stage lights dim as a lone flute pierces the silence, its eerie melody winding through the air like mist through mountain pines. Then, a rustle of feathers, the sharp click of wooden clogs, and suddenly he appears, the Tengu of Noh Theater, his long-nosed mask glowing crimson in the torchlight, elaborate feathered robes swirling with each deliberate movement. In Japan's classical Noh drama, the Tengu isn't just a character, it's a paradox made flesh, a bridge between the divine and the damned. Plays like Kurama Tengu and Tsuchigumo don't merely depict these beings, they transform the stage into a sacred space where every gesture, every chant carries layers of meaning older than the scripts themselves. What makes these performances so mesmerizing is how they weaponize symbolism. The Tengu's mask, for instance, isn't just a prop. Its exaggerated nose curves like a sickle moon, simultaneously mocking human vanity and mirroring the beak of a divine messenger. When the actor tilts it downward, the shadow transforms into a scowling demon. Lift it slightly, and suddenly the same features radiate wisdom. The costumes take this duality further, with robes stitched from hundreds of real crow feathers that shimmer black one moment, iridescent blue the next, depending on how the torchlight hits them. This isn't theater as entertainment, it's theater as ritual where the line between performer and spirit dissolves. Kurama Tengu, one of the most famous Noh plays featuring these beings, unfolds like a moral puzzle. A wandering monk encounters Sojobo, the Tengu king, who first tests his devotion through philosophical riddles, then unleashes supernatural terrors when the monk falters. The climax isn't a battle but a dance. The Tengu's choreography blending martial arts stances with the fluid motions of wind through bamboo, his fan slicing the air like a sword. Modern audiences might miss the deeper subtext. Every movement mirrors esoteric Buddhist mudras, turning the performance into a coded meditation on enlightenment's dangers. The monk's ultimate failure, his inability to withstand the Tengu's trials, serves as a warning against spiritual pride. The staging itself heightens this tension. Noh's minimalist sets force attention onto the actors, with a single gnarled pine painted on the backdrop representing Kurama's forests. When the Tengu flies, the effect is achieved through slow, gliding steps that somehow create the illusion of weightlessness, a technique so precise it takes decades to master. Even the haunting chorus serves a purpose. Their chants aren't narration but vibrations meant to unsettle, their words echoing the Tengu's own distorted sermons. There's a reason these plays were historically performed at temple festivals. They functioned as experiential morality tales, where villagers didn't just watch the Tengu's lessons but felt them in their bones. Perhaps most fascinating is how Noh preserves the Tengu's evolving role in Japanese culture. In earlier plays like Tsuchigumo, they're unambiguous villains, their masks twisted into grotesque snarls as they battle heroes. But by the Edo period, works like Kurama Tengu showcase their complexity, still dangerous yet capable of profound teachings. This shift mirrors society's own changing relationship with these beings, from feared disruptors to respected, if temperamental, guides. The masks themselves evolved too, with later versions featuring subtle gold leaf around the eyes, a visual hint at the Tengu's latent divinity. Even now, watching a Noh Tengu performance feels like stepping into a living scroll. The slow, deliberate pacing, the otherworldly music, the way the actor's voice modulates between human speech and crow-like calls, it's a masterclass in controlled tension. For all their supernatural trappings, these plays reveal something startlingly human, that wisdom and menace often wear the same face, and that the path to enlightenment might just require facing the monsters in the mirror first. The next time you see a Noh actor don that iconic mask, remember, you're not just watching a performance, you're witnessing 1,000 years of folklore taking flight. Among the crimson-faced Daitengu lords, Shojobo of Mount Kurama stands as the undisputed king, but he is far from alone in the pantheon of these revered bird demons. Venture to Mount Atego northwest of Kyoto, and you'll find Tarobo, his equally formidable counterpart, whose legends paint a fascinating contrast. Where Shojobo embodies the untamed wisdom of the mountain, Tarobo carries the aura of a stern guardian, his shrine perched like a sentinel over the ancient capital. The differences between these two figures reveal how regional beliefs shaped the Tengu's divine evolution. Shojobo's domain is the realm of transformation. His depictions in Kurama's art show him with wild white hair streaming like storm clouds, his nose elongated into a divine instrument rather than a grotesque feature. The local Yamabushi speak of him in paradoxes, a being who teaches swordsmanship yet abhors violence, who commands storms but shelters lost children. His most striking attribute is the shakujo staff topped with metallic rings, a Buddhist implement symbolizing his hard-won status as a protector of Dharma. This duality reflects Kurama's history as a spiritual crossroads, where Shinto mountain worship blended with esoteric Buddhism to create a Tengu who straddles both worlds. Tarobo of Mount Atego, meanwhile, wears his authority differently. Atego's shrine's votive tablets depict him with a more refined bearing, his crimson face framed by a black courtier's cap, a nod to his role as a disciplinarian of the nobility. Unlike Shojobo's association with warriors, Tarobo's lore centers on punishing greed. One famous tale tells of a merchant who ignored his warning and attempted to smuggle timber down the mountain, only to find his ropes turned to serpents mid-descent. The shrine's annual fire-walking ritual, where priests stride barefoot over glowing coals, is said to have been gifted by Tarobo himself as a test of purity. The regional distinctions go deeper than personality. In Shikoku's Iya Valley, the Daitengu takes on a gentler aspect as a protector of hidden villages, his shrines marked by towering cedar groves instead of dramatic cliffs. Meanwhile, Dua Sanzan's snowbound peaks host a Tengu king who wears a monk's straw raincoat, his face blue tinged from centuries of dwelling among blizzards. These variations aren't accidents, they're living reflections of how communities adapted the Tengu myth to their landscapes and struggles. A fishing village Tengu might wield a harpoon instead of a fan, while one near volcanic fields could control eruptions rather than storms. What unites them all is the shift from feared spirits to venerated figures. The red paint on their masks isn't just decoration, it's a visual code. In Shinto, red repels evil, while in Buddhism, it represents life force and divine energy. By adorning their Tengu with this hue, worshippers signaled their transformation from dangerous yokai to kami-like beings worthy of prayer. The Daitengu's shrines often sit at the precise altitude where mist forms neither fully in the human world nor the divine, but forever bridging the two. Visitors leave offerings of a Bura-age fried tofu not out of fear but gratitude, a culinary tradition born from legends of Tengu savoring its crisp texture after battles. The most telling detail lies in their hands. Whether it's Shojobo's fan, Tarobo's iron-tipped staff, or the Iya Tengu's flute, each object reveals their role. These aren't weapons but tools, instruments for shaping wind, wisdom, and human fate. The diversity of Daitengu across Japan proves folklore isn't static. It's a conversation between land and people, where even the fiercest demons can earn a place at the altar. Every January, the streets of Osaka erupt in a riot of color and sound as the Tengu Matsuri takes over the city, a spectacle where ancient folklore collides with modern celebration. Towering floats bearing grotesque yet mesmerizing Tengu masks weave through the crowds, their exaggerated noses bobbing rhythmically to the beat of taiko drums. These aren't mere costumes. Some masks stretch over 2 meters tall, carved from centuries-old cedar and painted in vermilion so vivid it seems to pulse under the winter sun. Local legend claims the festival began when a Tengu appeared to a starving village, teaching them to brew medicinal sake in exchange for yearly homage. Today, participants clad in happy coats reenact this pact, pouring offerings of that very sake into wooden masu boxes while chanting invocations older than the city itself. The real magic happens after dusk, as paper lanterns cast flickering shadows across the streets. The largest Tengu mask, affectionately called O Tengu-sama by locals, is hoisted onto a shrine-shaped float. This is no passive display. Teams of bearers deliberately rock the structure, making the mask's eyes flash open in the firelight, a feat achieved through hidden levers and generations of practiced motion. Visitors speak of an uncanny presence during this moment, as if the spirit behind the legend briefly inhabits the carved wood. Children scramble to catch falling beans thrown by performers, a twist on the traditional Meimaki ritual where Tengu replace Oni demons as the purged evils of the new year. Meanwhile, deep in the Kii Mountains, a very different kind of Tengu worship unfolds under strict secrecy. The Yamabushi of Yoshino perform their annual Sato Goma fire ritual not for spectators, but for the mountain spirits they believe still walk among them. Clad in white robes symbolizing death and rebirth, these ascetics circle a blazing pyre, their conch shell horns emitting low, mournful notes that echo against the cliffs. What makes this ceremony unique is the Kyuji-kiri hand gestures, esoteric finger weavings said to have been taught by Tengu themselves. As the flames peak, participants toss in small wooden tags inscribed with prayers, the smoke carrying them skyward like the beating of invisible wings. The contrast between these celebrations reveals the Tengu's enduring duality. The Osaka festival embraces their playful, communal side, the trickster who enjoys human company. The Yamabushi rites honor their fearsome aspect as keepers of forbidden knowledge. Both traditions share one profound similarity. Participants genuinely believe their actions maintain an ancient contract. In Osaka, merchants credit the festival with bringing good fortune to businesses lining the parade route. Yoshino's monks speak of preventing landslides through their rituals, convinced the Tengu still control the mountain's tremors. Modern innovations have crept into these ancient practices. Some Osaka neighborhoods now project digital Tengu animations onto buildings, their pixelated wings flapping in sync with electronic music. Yet the core remains unchanged, a reminder that these beings evolved alongside Japanese culture, neither fully gods nor monsters, but something beautifully in between. Whether through carnivalesque parades or secretive mountain rites, the Tengu continue to soar across the centuries, their presence as palpable now as when they first took flight in humanity's imagination. By the Edo period, something remarkable had happened to the Tengu. Their image had shifted from feared disruptors to unlikely guardians of sacred truths. No longer just tricksters lurking in mountain shadows, these creatures emerged in popular tales as fierce protectors of Buddhist law, exposing hypocrisy wherever they found it. Take Tengu Meigi-ko, a kabuki play that became a sensation in 18th century Kyoto. The story follows a corrupt abbot who amasses wealth by selling fake relics to desperate pilgrims until one night, a Tengu descends upon his temple not to terrorize but to restore justice. With a single sweep of its feathered fan, the creature scatters the charlatan's ill-gotten gold across the countryside, leaving behind an inscription burned into the temple floor. Even crows know stolen grain when they see it. This wasn't just entertainment, it reflected a deeper cultural shift. As Buddhism became increasingly institutionalized, public distrust grew toward clergy who prioritized power over piety. The Tengu, once symbols of spiritual corruption themselves, now served as cosmic whistleblowers. Their transformation made perfect sense. Who better to spot a fraud than a being who'd spent centuries perfecting deception? In one particularly poignant folktale from Nagano, a Daitengu disguises itself as a leper begging at a monastery's gate. When the monks shoo him away, their grand Buddha statue cracks down the middle at sunset, revealing not gold beneath the gilding but rotted wood. Only then does the leper reveal his true form, his wings unfurling as he declares, "False piety smells worse than any beggar's rags." Art from this period captures this duality brilliantly. Ukiyo-e prints show Tengu perched atop temple eaves like feathery gargoyles, their red faces twisted not in menace but in righteous scorn. Scholar Ando Hiroshige even depicted them wielding shakujo staffs, tools of Buddhist discipline, as they chased decadent priests through comic scrolls. The message was clear: these beings had become the moral compass the human world lacked. Their long noses now symbolized discernment rather than mockery, sniffing out pretense with supernatural precision. What cemented their role as Dharma protectors was their unique position outside human hierarchies. Unlike mortal judges constrained by politics or social standing, Tengu answered to higher laws. A famous Edo joke circulated about a magistrate who tried to bribe a Tengu with a Bura age-fried tofu, only for the treat to transform into a scroll listing his every crime. This supernatural immunity to corruption made them ideal arbiters in folklore, their verdicts as impartial as the mountain winds they commanded, yet their justice wasn't always thunderous. Some of the most beloved tales involved Tengu operating through subtle influence. In The Bellmaker's Apprentice, a lazy boy given to stealing temple offerings keeps finding crow feathers in his pockets, each one mysteriously returning whatever he'd pilfered. After the third time, he spots a Kotengu watching from the rafters, not with anger, but something akin to disappointment. The boy reforms not out of fear, but shame, realizing even a mere bird demon held higher standards than he did. This protective aspect extended beyond punishing individuals to safeguarding sacred knowledge itself. Mountain shrines spoke of Tengu hiding Buddhist texts during periods of persecution, their hollowed-out cedar trees serving as secret libraries. Yamabushi monks told of encountering these winged librarians deep in the forests, where the creatures would challenge them with koans before revealing fragments of lost sutras. The implication was profound: the Dharma was too precious to leave entirely in human hands. By the 19th century, the Tengu's evolution was complete. No longer just forest spirits or fallen monks, they'd become something richer, a mythic reflection of humanity's own capacity for change. Their stories asked a daring question: if even creatures born from chaos could become forces for good, what excuse did people have? When villagers left offerings at Tengu shrines now, it wasn't just to ward off mischief, but to honor the unexpected guardians watching over a world all too prone to losing its way. The mountains of Japan have always been more than just rock and forest. They're thresholds between worlds, places where the veil between human and divine grows thin. Nowhere is this more evident than in the sacred practices of Shugendō, the ancient path of mountain asceticism, where the Tengu underwent one final, astonishing transformation. These bird demons, once feared as agents of chaos, became living manifestations of Fudo Mayu, the wrathful yet compassionate guardian of Buddhist lore. Picture a Yamabushi monk standing barefoot on a moonlit cliff, his face illuminated by the flickering flames of a Goma fire ritual. As the chants rise, he reaches not for a scripture, but for a wooden Tengu Zo statue, its fierce expression mirroring the deity it represents. This isn't mere symbolism, it's the culmination of centuries of spiritual alchemy. The rituals reveal how deeply Tengu became entwined with Shugendō's core teachings. During Soka Shinbatsu training, the grueling process of achieving enlightenment in one's current body ascetics would meditate on Tengu Zo carved from sacred cypress. The statues weren't idols but focal points, their exaggerated features designed to break ordinary perception. A long nose became a lightning rod for concentration, the piercing eyes a reminder to see through illusion. Some initiation rites involved aspirants spending nights in caves clutching these figures, their fingers tracing the grooves of wooden feathers as they envisioned their own spiritual wings unfurling. The most intense ceremonies, like those at Duo Sanzan's 3 sacred peaks, required initiates to become the Tengu, wearing masks painted with its likeness while navigating treacherous ridges blindfolded, trusting their other senses to guide them as the creature would. What cemented this connection was Fudo Mayu's own paradoxical nature. Like the Tengu, this deity balances fury and benevolence. His flaming sword cuts through ignorance, yet his rope binds devotees to compassion. Medieval scrolls depict extraordinary scenes where the two beings merge. Fudo's usual attendants, the 2 child demons Kungara and Seitoka, sometimes appear with crow-like wings and beaks, while Tengu in these artworks hold vajras and lotus flowers typically reserved for enlightened beings. The message was revolutionary. If even these once feared creatures could channel divine will, then no soul was beyond redemption. Artifacts tell the story best. At Kinpusan-ji Temple, a 14th century set of initiation masks shows the Tengu's face gradually smoothing into Fudo's, the beak receding into a snarl of wisdom rather than malice. Hidden shrines in the Kiai Mountains preserve feathered mandalas, intricate diagrams where crow feathers replace gold leaf, mapping the journey from earthly attachment to spiritual flight. Even the Yamabushi's iconic Horagai conch shell carries Tengu symbolism. Its haunting note mimics both the creature's cry and Fudo's mantra, a sonic bridge between worlds. Modern practitioners still honor this bond. During autumn's Shorei-sai festival, masked dancers reenact the Tengu's enlightenment, their movements blending martial arts stances with mudra gestures. The climax sees them shedding their feathered cloaks to reveal Fudo's crimson aura, painted on their backs, a visceral metaphor for transformation. Meanwhile, Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Japanese letter. Deep in mountain retreats, elders teach that the Tengu never truly became divine, they always were. The confusion stemmed from humanity's limited perception, our inability to recognize that a being can be both fierce and sacred, wild yet wise. Perhaps that's the most profound lesson whispered on these misty slopes, that enlightenment doesn't mean erasing our shadow, but learning to soar with it. That long, beak-like nose protruding from the Tengu's face isn't just a quirky feature, it's a loaded symbol, a visual pun carved into folklore with layers of meaning. At first glance, you might see phallic imagery, a nod to the creature's raw, untamed energy. After all, in many cultures, exaggerated features represent virility or primal power. But in Japan's nuanced symbolic language, the nose carries far richer connotations. Linguistically, the word for nose, hana, shares a phonetic root with hone, meaning bone or core, and even han, as in hane, one's true nature. The Tengu's nose, then, isn't just an appendage, it's a glaring spotlight on human flaws, thrust forward for all to see. One of the most biting interpretations ties the nose to pride. Medieval Japanese society had a saying, "A stretched nose invites a clipped wing." Essentially, arrogance leads to downfall. Picture a corrupt samurai or a decadent noble, their noses metaphorically elongating with every act of hubris. The Tengu's grotesque schnoz becomes a literal manifestation of this moral failing, a warning etched in flesh and feather. Scrolls from the Kamakura period show Tengu using their noses like weapons, poking at greedy monks or toppling towers of ill-gotten gold. It's no coincidence that in Kyogen farces, characters mimicking Tengu often stroke their fake noses while spouting pompous proverbs, the ultimate satire of self-importance. Then there's the theory linking the nose to foreign influence. When Portuguese missionaries arrived in the 16th century, their prominent facial features stood in stark contrast to Japanese physiognomy. Local artists, already adept at caricature, may have fused these unfamiliar traits with the existing Tengu archetype, turning the creature into a sly commentary on cultural anxiety. Some Edo period ukiyo-e even depict Tengu wearing crosses or holding Western scrolls, their noses exaggerated into near-comical proportions. Yet this wasn't purely xenophobic. It reflected a broader tension between tradition and outside ideas, with the Tengu's nose serving as a barometer for societal discomfort. But perhaps the most profound layer lies in the nose's dual role as both weapon and tool. Yamabushi monks speak of Tengu using their noses like lightning rods, channeling divine energy during rituals. In certain Shugendō practices, initiates would touch ceremonial rods to a Tengu's nose, believing it concentrated spiritual power. This transforms the nose from a mark of ridicule into an instrument of transcendence, a bridge between mockery and reverence. The very feature that lampoons human weakness also, paradoxically, channels the divine. Modern festivals keep this symbolism alive. During the Namahage rituals in Akita, participants wear Tengu masks with detachable noses. The longer the nose, the more authority the wearer holds. Yet if the nose breaks during the performance, it's seen as the Tengu's way of humbling the performer. Even today, the phrase Tengu nai naru, to become a Tengu, describes someone swollen with pride, their metaphorical nose growing with every boast. The lesson endures, whether as a mirror for vanity, a vessel for sacred energy, or a cultural Rorschach test. The Tengu's nose remains one of folklore's most brilliantly multi-layered creations. Step into the vibrant world of Edo period ukiyo-e, and you'll find the Tengu stealing the spotlight in ways that range from uproarious to haunting. These woodblock prints didn't just depict folklore, they brought it to life with explosions of color and wit, turning bird demons into cultural megastars. Take Tsukioka Yoshitoshi's masterpiece, Tengu and the Moon, from his 100 Aspects of the Moon series. Here, a Daitengu perches on a gnarled pine branch, his crimson face tilted toward a luminous full moon, the curves of his nose echoing its shape. But look closer, his clawed fingers clutch not a weapon but a flute, and his expression holds something unexpectedly pensive. This isn't the terrifying forest spirit of old legends, it's a portrait of melancholy, as if the creature itself is pondering the passage of centuries between its demonic past and this quiet moment under the moon. The humor in ukiyo-e Tengu is just as striking. Kuniyoshi's Tengu's Sake Party shows a rowdy gathering of the creatures, their noses comically elongated as they slurp sake from oversized bowls, their wings flopping drunkenly. One has lost his straw sandal mid-flight, another snores against a toppled barrel. These prints weren't just entertainment, they were social commentary, using Tengu to lampoon the excesses of the merchant class. A particularly cheeky series by Utagawa Kunisada reimagines kabuki actors as Tengu, their theatrical flair amplified by feathered costumes, turning the demonic into the fashionable. The message was clear: if even these fearsome beings could be objects of laughter, perhaps no one was beyond satire, yet not all prints played for laughs. Some tapped into the Tengu's darker mystique. In Hokusai's rarely seen Tengu of the Whirlwind, the creature becomes a force of nature, his wings whipping up a spiraling storm that tears through a village, roofs and tools caught in the maelstrom. The genius lies in the details amid the chaos. A single child's kite remains untouched, hinting at the Tengu's selective wrath against corruption. Similarly, Yoshitoshi's Tengu instructs the boy emperor reimagines the creature as a stern tutor, his fan pointed like a sword at a cowering young ruler, the shadows of past misdeeds flickering on the palace walls. These artworks transformed folklore into visual morality tales where the Tengu's judgment felt as immediate as the ink on the page. The printing techniques themselves added layers of meaning. Tengu noses, often embossed with subtle ridges to catch the light, seemed to grow or recede depending on the viewer's angle, a literal reflection of their shifting roles between mockery and wisdom. Printmakers exploited the limitations of their palette, using the stark contrast of vermilion and indigo to make Tengu leap from the page, their eyes sometimes inlaid with mica to glint unnervingly in candlelight. Collectors would reportedly test a print's quality by how well it captured the creature's infamous smirk. Too flat and it lost its eerie charisma, too exaggerated and it became farce. What makes these works truly remarkable is how they mirror Edo society's own contradictions. The same urbanites who bought comical Tengu prints for their tea rooms also sought out solemn depictions for personal altars, treating them as talismans against deception. The ukiyo-e Tengu became a kind of cultural Rorschach test, whether as drunken buffoon, divine punisher, or wistful philosopher. They reflected back whatever the viewer needed to see. And perhaps that's why these images endure. They capture the essence of a creature forever hovering between worlds, as fluid and multifaceted as the woodblock ink that brought them to life. In the concrete jungles of 1970s Tokyo, something strange stirred in the neon-lit shadows, a resurgence of Tengu sightings that sent chills through the city's salarymen and schoolchildren alike. Newspapers dubbed it the Tengu sighting boom, with over 300 reports flooding police stations across the suburbs. Witnesses described encounters straight out of medieval scrolls, winged figures perched on telephone wires, their silhouettes backlit by flickering streetlights, or crimson faces glimpsed briefly in the reflective glass of high-rise buildings. The most chilling accounts came from the Tama Hills, where night workers reported a being with a grotesquely elongated nose and tattered business suit, its wingtips rustling like loose papers in the wind. These weren't the majestic Daitengu of mountain lore, these were urban phantoms, their feathers streaked with soot, their once sacred fans replaced by discarded office umbrellas. What made this wave especially eerie was its overlap with Japan's own UFO craze. In 1974, a Kyushu farmer's account of a winged humanoid near his rice field sparked debates among paranormal researchers. Was this a Tengu adapting to the space age or something far stranger? The creature's description matched no known folklore exactly. Metallic feathers, eyes that glowed like aircraft warning lights, and a high-pitched hum instead of the traditional crow-like cry. Yet when witnesses sketched its face, the resemblance was undeniable. That unmistakable beak-like nose, now streamlined like the nose cone of a jet. UFO magazines of the era labeled them Tengutachi no 2, suggesting these beings were either evolved descendants or interstellar imposters capitalizing on human belief. The phenomenon took a surreal turn when truck drivers along the Tomai Expressway began swapping stories of highway Tengu entities that kept pace with their vehicles at impossible speeds, their wings blurring against the night sky. One driver swore he saw a flock of them gathered around a crashed motorcycle near Hakone, their feathered forms bending over the rider like a macabre pit crew. By dawn, only a single crow feather remained on the asphalt. These tales tapped into a deep-seated anxiety about technology's grip on modern life, casting the Tengu as chaotic correctors in a society hurtling too fast toward progress. Decades later, the digital age gave these legends new wings. Security camera footage from a 2017 construction site in Ikebukuro showed a shadowy figure scaling a 20-story crane in seconds, its movements too fluid for any human-free runner. Online forums lit up with comparisons to the Kotengu's legendary agility, while skeptical bloggers dismissed it as a viral marketing stunt. Then came the smartphone era's most infamous Tengu clip, a shaky night video from Mount Takao purporting to show a Daitengu glaring into the lens, its eyes reflecting the infrared light with an uncanny red glow. Forensic video analysts couldn't definitively debunk it, noting the way the creature's feathers disrupted digital pixelation in ways CGI couldn't replicate at the time. Contemporary artists and writers have seized on these urban Tengu with fascination. Manga like Tengu, Tokyo Blackout reimagines them as cyberpunk vigilantes, their talons clicking against holographic billboards as they punish corrupt CEOs. Meanwhile, Shinto priests in metropolitan shrines report a curious trend: salarymen discreetly leaving offerings of convenience store, fried tofu at miniature Tengu shrines tucked between vending machines, a quiet nod to the old ways in a world that's forgotten how to look up. Whether as cautionary tale, cultural coping mechanism, or something more inexplicable, these modern sightings prove one thing: the Tengu never truly left. They just learned to soar between skyscrapers instead of cedars, their laughter echoing in the blind spots of our hyper-connected world. The Tengu's wings have carried them far beyond ancient mountain shrines today. They soar through the pixels of anime, the polygons of video games, and the pages of modern literature, their roles as complex as their folklore origins. Take Naruto's Uchiha clan, their Sharingan eyes and crow motifs dripping with Tengu symbolism. Their leader, Madara Uchiha, doesn't just borrow the creature's aesthetic, he embodies its duality, a fallen guardian whose godlike power is matched only by his capacity for destruction. His towering Susanoo, a spectral warrior cloaked in blue flames, mirrors the Daitengu's wrathful divinity, while the clan's association with fire and wind techniques echoes the creature's elemental mastery. But here's the twist: where traditional Tengu often punish arrogance, the Uchiha's downfall is arrogance, their hubris twisting their crow-like wisdom into a curse. This isn't lazy adaptation, it's folklore reinvented for an age where heroes and villains wear the same face. Video games have taken the Tengu's legacy even further. In Smite, the playable Tengu deity Kuzenbo isn't some mindless monster. He's a tactical tank, his abilities revolving around deflecting attacks and controlling the battlefield, a nod to the creature's reputation for turning an opponent's strength against them. His ultimate move, summoning a whirlwind of spectral crows, directly channels the Tengu's wind manipulation from Edo period scrolls. Meanwhile, Neo-2 Tengu enemies are more than just sword-wielding birdmen. They're gatekeepers of advanced combat techniques, their movesets teaching players to anticipate and adapt, much like the mythical Tengu who schooled warriors on misty peaks. Even indie games like Tengame weave the creature's essence into their fabric. The entire game unfolds like a living pop-up book, its papercraft world evoking the delicate beauty of ukiyo-e prints where Tengu once danced. Literature hasn't been left behind. Modern novels like the Tengu's Game of Go recast the creature as a chessmaster antihero, manipulating events across centuries to correct humanity's course through calculated chaos. The protagonist, a historian unraveling the Tengu's schemes, slowly realizes she's not just studying the creature, she's become its latest pawn. This mirrors folklore's trickster mentors but flips the script: the student never outsmarts the master. Even children's books have gotten in on the act. Tengu Boy, a bestseller in Japan, follows a half-Tengu child navigating schoolyard bullying, his struggles to hide his wings under a backpack offering a poignant metaphor for cultural assimilation. What unites these modern interpretations is how they honor the Tengu's core contradictions while refracting them through contemporary lenses. The creature's role as both punisher and mentor persists, but now it's layered with cyberpunk dystopia's Ghostwire, Tokyo's feathered phantoms hunting lost souls in Shibuya, or corporate satire The Manga Tengu President, where a Daitengu runs a failing company with literal cutthroat efficiency. Even Western media has borrowed the archetype. Hellboy's Tengu-inspired villains in the Storm storyline wield fans that slice through steel, a nod to the legendary gale summoning techniques of their Japanese counterparts. The brilliance of these reinventions lies in their flexibility. A Tengu can be a wisecracking sidekick in one story. Yokai watches Venacht with his suave crow feather scarf, and a Lovecraftian horror in another, The Tengu's Maw, a horror novella where the creature's mouth stretches across dimensions. Yet whether they're teaching ninjutsu or haunting office buildings, these modern Tengu retain their most vital trait, the ability to expose hypocrisy. Just as medieval monks feared their piercing gaze, today's protagonists, whether anime teens or jaded detectives, find their deepest flaws laid bare by these winged mirrors of the soul. The mediums change, but the message remains: confront your shadows, or the shadows will confront you. Modern science offers intriguing theories to explain the origins of Tengu legends, peeling back layers of folklore to reveal possible real-world inspirations hidden beneath the feathers and folklore. One compelling theory points to Japan's native wildlife specifically, the dramatic silhouettes of golden eagles and the rare, prehistoric-looking hornbills that once roamed the archipelago. Picture a feudal farmer glimpsing a golden eagle mid-hunt, its 7-foot wingspan blotting out the sun as it swoops toward the tree line. With its piercing yellow eyes and feathered leggings resembling billowing hakama trousers, it's easy to see how such a sight could morph into tales of winged humanoids lurking in the mountains. Even the eerie, almost metallic cries of the crested serpent eagle, a sound likened to a ghostly whistle, mirror descriptions of Tengu vocalizations in medieval texts. Hornbills with their massive curved beaks and helmet-like casques could have further fueled the imagery of the Tengu's infamous nose, especially when glimpsed fleetingly through dense forest canopies. But what about encounters that feel more supernatural, like the chilling accounts of paralyzed victims witnessing red-faced demons perched on their chests? Sleep paralysis offers a plausible explanation for many Tengu attack stories. This phenomenon, where the brain wakes before the body, often includes hallucinations of shadowy intruders and crushing pressure details that align eerily with Edo period accounts of nocturnal Tengu visitations. Historical records describe victims waking unable to move as a grinning, long-nosed figure sat heavily on their torso, its wings filling the room with a sound like rustling parchment. Modern neuroscience recognizes these hallucinatory figures as manifestations of the intruder archetype, a cross-cultural byproduct of our brain's threat detection systems misfiring during REM sleep. In Japan's context, where Tengu already loomed large in the collective imagination, it's no surprise these sleep demons took on avian features. Psychologist Carl Jung's concept of the shadow self provides another lens, one that might explain why Tengu narratives resonate so deeply across centuries. The shadow represents the repressed, primal aspects of personality that society deems unacceptable: aggression, cunning, even unchecked ambition. Tengu, with their dual roles as both destroyers and mentors, embody this dichotomy perfectly. Consider how they punish arrogant monks yet train worthy warriors, or how their legends oscillate between chaos and justice. This duality mirrors humanity's own struggle to reconcile civility with primal instincts. The Tengu's infamous nose, often interpreted as a symbol of unchecked ego, could represent the shadow's intrusiveness, the way suppressed traits inevitably stick out when left unaddressed. Even their mountain habitats hold symbolic weight. In Jungian terms, ascending a peak represents confronting the unconscious, making the Tengu's high-altitude domains a perfect metaphor for facing one's inner darkness. Yet these scientific theories don't diminish the Tengu's cultural power. If anything, they enrich it. Whether born from misidentified birds, sleep disorders, or universal psychological patterns, the fact that these stories endured and evolved speaks to their profound adaptability. The golden eagle theory is particularly poetic. A real-life raptor's majesty transformed first into a demon, then a deity, its wings carrying not just its body but an entire nation's fears and aspirations. Similarly, sleep paralysis explains the visceral terror of nighttime encounters, while the shadow archetype reveals why Tengu tales still feel relevant in therapy offices and corporate trainings today. These explanations aren't contradictions to folklore, they're continuations of the same story, one where humanity projects its mysteries onto the world, then gradually learns to decipher them, only to find new layers waiting beneath. The Tengu, ever the trickster, seems to chuckle from the treetops. "You thought you had me figured out, look again." Hidden among the ancient cedars of Nagano's Togakushi region, the Dosagen Tengu shrine stands as a breathtaking testament to these winged beings' enduring reverence. Towering over the forest path, a 6-meter-tall Tengu statue looms with arms crossed, its crimson face weathered by decades of mountain winds, yet still radiating an almost palpable intensity. This isn't just a sculpture, it's a sentinel. Visitors often describe an uncanny sensation of being scrutinized as they pass beneath its gaze, a feeling rooted in local lore claiming the statue's eyes follow the unworthy. The shrine's origins trace back to the 12th century, when Yamabushi monks established it as a training ground for confronting one's inner demons, quite literally. They believed the Tengu here served as both tormentor and mentor, testing pilgrims through psychological trials disguised as supernatural encounters. What makes Dosagen truly unique are its votive offerings, not the usual Imao wooden plaques, but miniature Tengu Zo statues carved from local cypress. Devotees inscribe these with personal struggles, from addiction to workplace bullying, then place them at the statue's feet alongside a Bura-age fried tofu wrapped in bamboo leaves. The practice stems from an Edo period legend where a bankrupt merchant offered his last piece of tofu to a starving Tengu, only to wake the next morning with his debts mysteriously settled. Today, salarymen cluster here during bonus season, leaving salary slips folded into origami cranes beside their offerings. The most moving displays are the Tengu mochai, sticky rice cakes shaped like wings, left by parents praying for wayward children's return. The pilgrimage route itself tells a story, ascending the stone staircase flanked by 108 lanterns, one for each human vice. In Buddhist teachings, the air thickens with the scent of incense and damp moss. Halfway up, a weathered torii gate marks the Tengu no High Tengu fire, where visitors burn slips of paper inscribed with negative traits they wish to purge. The ashes are collected in iron urns shaped like the creature's beak, a visceral reminder of transformation. Those brave enough can participate in the monthly Tengu Kagyura night ritual, where masked dancers reenact the Tengu's judgment of souls, their torches casting monstrous shadows against the cedar trunks. Further north in Yamagata, the three mountains of Dua offer a contrasting experience at the Hagyoro Tengu shrine. Here, the focus shifts from confrontation to wisdom. The main attraction is the Tengu no Kuchai, Tengu's mouth, a natural rock formation resembling a gaping beak where pilgrims whisper questions. The answers supposedly come via wind patterns. A sudden gust means affirmation, while stillness signals reconsideration. Priests teach that these aren't supernatural communications but reflections of one's subconscious, with the mountain amplifying inner truths. The shrine's most peculiar tradition involves Tengu gami, coarse paper rubbed against the rocks, then worn as amulets to absorb the creature's discernment. For urban seekers, Tokyo's hidden gem is the Teikawa Inari Shrine's Tengu Den. Tucked between skyscrapers in Shinjuku, this pocket-sized sanctuary features a modern twist. Digital Ima tablets where prayers generate AI-rendered Tengu avatars that analyze your request before displaying a recommended sutra. While traditionalists balk at the tech, the shrine's caretakers argue it's no different from ancient divination tools, just a new way to engage younger generations. Their Tengu-inspired Power Spot meditation app, featuring ambient sounds of fluttering wings and mountain streams, has surprisingly become popular among stressed office workers. Each pilgrimage site reveals a different facet of Tengu worship: Nagano's confrontational purity, Dua's introspective wisdom, Tokyo's adaptive innovation. Yet they share one profound truth: these aren't places to merely request favors from mythical beings. They're mirrors held up to the human soul, challenging us to grow through whatever form the Tengu takes, whether carved cedar, whispering wind, or even a pixelated guardian on a smartphone screen. The real journey isn't up the mountain, but inward. In recent years, a fascinating shift has transformed the Tengu from ancient folklore figures into unlikely champions of modern environmentalism. Across rural Japan, conservation groups have adopted these iconic bird demons as mascots for forest protection initiatives, merging ecological activism with cultural heritage in unexpectedly powerful ways. The Tengu forest conservation movement began in the early 2000s in Nara Prefecture, where loggers reported an eerie phenomenon: chainsaws malfunctioning near certain ancient cedars, their blades mysteriously dulled overnight. Rather than dismissing these occurrences as superstition, local environmentalists leaned into the legend, posting signs featuring crimson-faced Tengu with the warning, "Even demons know when trees are sacred." This clever rebranding tapped into something profound: the Tengu's deep-rooted connection to Japan's wilderness. Unlike Western conservation campaigns relying on scientific data or guilt trips, these projects speak a language woven into the cultural DNA. Villagers who might shrug at carbon sequestration statistics pause when told a particular grove serves as a Tengu no Mori, Tengu forest, its tangled roots supposedly hiding feather-lined nests. Schools incorporate Tengu lore into ecology lessons, with children crafting winged masks from recycled materials while learning how old-growth forests regulate water cycles. The genius lies in framing environmentalism not as an imported ideology, but as the revival of an ancient pact between humans and the spirits of the land. The movement's most striking innovation is the Tengu Patrol system in Wakayama's Kiai Mountains. Volunteers don stylized crow feather armbands crafted from upcycled fabric to monitor illegal logging sites. Their surveillance cameras play recorded Tengu calls at random intervals, creating an atmosphere of supernatural watchfulness that's proven remarkably effective. One former poacher, interviewed anonymously, admitted the sound of rustling wings still makes his hands shake years after abandoning the trade. Psychological studies suggest these tactics work because they trigger deep-seated cultural memory. The brain processes the Tengu's presence as both immediate threat and ancestral reminder of nature's retribution. Corporate Japan has cautiously embraced this trend too. Kirin Brewery's Tengu no Mori beer uses sustainably harvested bamboo in its packaging, each six-pack featuring a different Daitengu teaching about local ecosystems. The campaign's viral video shows a cartoon Tengu scolding hikers for littering, his fan stirring plastic waste into a tornado that deposits it neatly into recycling bins. Folklore meets behavioral science with surprising effectiveness. Even Tokyo's metropolitan government has adopted Tengu imagery for its urban greening projects, with rooftop gardens marked by plaques showing a modernized Tengu cradling a sapling instead of a sword. Critics initially dismissed these efforts as superficial, but the results speak volumes. Areas using Tengu-centered conservation methods report 30% higher compliance with logging bans compared to standard warning signs. Anthropologists note renewed interest in traditional forestry practices like Satoyama woodlot management as younger generations reconnect with the stories tied to these landscapes. The most poignant success comes from Miyagi Prefecture, where tsunami survivors planted a Tengu-guarded coastal forest to buffer future waves. Their memorial plaque reads, "The demons who protect us now are the trees we plant today." Perhaps the movement's deepest impact lies in reframing environmental stewardship as spiritual practice rather than obligation. At a shrine in Eheim, visitors receive Tengu Gokyuhi, Tengu secretes small pouches of native tree seeds with instructions tied to lunar cycles. The accompanying pamphlet doesn't mention carbon footprints. Instead, it tells the legend of a Tengu who wept when his mountain burned, his tears becoming the first acorns. This emotional resonance, this sense of participating in something mythic, may explain why these projects thrive where purely rational approaches falter. After all, who wants to be the generation that made the guardians of the wilderness abandon their posts? The Tengu's wings cast shadows far beyond Japan's shores, echoing a universal fascination with avian spirits that straddle the line between chaos and wisdom. Look to the thunderous skies of Native American lore, where the thunderbird reigns a being of raw elemental power, its wing beats stirring storms, yet also a protector who purifies the land. Like the Tengu, it punishes the wicked, but where the thunderbird's might is untamed, the Tengu's influence is subtler, a razor-sharp wit honed over centuries of folklore. Both are intermediaries between earth and sky, yet the Tengu's transformation from feared demon to revered mentor reveals a uniquely Japanese emphasis on redemption through discipline. Venture into Slavic tales and you'll encounter the gamayan, a prophetic bird with a woman's face, singing truths too profound for mortal ears. At first glance, she seems the Tengu's opposite, serene where the Tengu is mischievous, poetic where the Tengu is pragmatic. But dig deeper and the parallels emerge. Both are keepers of esoteric knowledge, their wisdom guarded behind tests of character. The gamayan offers cryptic visions, the Tengu demands physical and mental trials. One gifts insight through melody, the other through the clashing of wooden swords. This contrast highlights a cultural divide. Slavic traditions often depict wisdom as bestowed, while Japanese lore insists it must be earned through relentless effort. Then there's Garuda, the golden-winged mount of Vishnu in Hindu mythology. A divine raptor with the power to rival gods, Garuda shares the Tengu's mastery of wind and battle prowess. Yet their paths diverge in purpose. Garuda is a loyal steed, his strength harnessed in service to order. The Tengu, even at their most benevolent, remain fiercely independent, answering only to their own moral code. Japanese art often shows them aloof on pine branches, watching human follies with amused detachment, while Garuda is forever mid-flight, carrying divine will across the cosmos. The difference speaks volumes. One culture's celestial courier is another's enigmatic philosopher, both avian, yet worlds apart in symbolism. Even West African folklore's Anansi, though spider-shaped, shares the Tengu's trickster ethos, turning societal norms upside down to expose hypocrisy. But where Anansi's antics celebrate cunning for survival, the Tengu's mischief serves higher stakes, the refinement of the human spirit. A Tengu might steal a child's hat, only to return it years later as a helmet in their moment of need, a reminder that every slight could be a lesson in disguise. This pedagogical cruelty reflects Buddhism's emphasis on enlightenment through adversity, a thread absent in most global trickster tales. What truly sets the Tengu apart is their fluid identity. Thunderbirds remain gods, gamayan eternally oracles, Garuda steadfastly divine. The Tengu, they evolved. From omens of disaster to spiritual drill instructors, their story mirrors Japan's own historical shifts, from fear of the unknown to reverence for the transformative power of discipline. Their long noses, once symbols of mockery, became emblems of discernment. Their mountain retreats transformed from haunted woods to sacred dojos. No other avian mythos underwent such a profound metamorphosis, proving that in Japan, even the wildest spirits can learn and teach the art of change. The Tengu's deepest power lies not in their magical abilities or fearsome appearances, but in their role as mirrors to the human soul, embodiments of our most humbling contradictions. At their core, these creatures represent the eternal tension between our worst impulses and highest potential. Their long noses, so often caricatured as symbols of arrogance, also serve as antennae of discernment, physically manifesting the idea that true wisdom requires reaching beyond oneself. This duality speaks volumes about Japan's philosophical tradition, where enlightenment isn't about transcending human flaws but transforming them into tools for growth. Consider the Tengu's relationship with Buddhist monks, a dynamic rich with psychological insight. In medieval scrolls, we see them tormenting prideful clerics by exposing their hypocrisy, whispering sacred texts backward to vain scholars, or conjuring illusions of heavenly rewards for greedy ascetics. Yet these weren't just morality plays about punishment. The Tengu served as cosmic drill instructors, using harsh methods to reveal an uncomfortable truth. Spiritual growth requires confronting the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Their infamous trickster behavior, stealing a monk's robes only to return them perfectly mended after his humiliating walk home, symbolizes the painful yet necessary process of ego dissolution. This philosophical legacy extends beyond religion into Japan's broader cultural values. The samurai who emulated Tengu tactics weren't just borrowing combat techniques, they were internalizing a mindset. When a warrior studied the Tengu's fluid movements, transitioning seamlessly between offense and defense, they were learning to balance aggression with restraint, instinct with strategy. Modern business consultants in Japan still reference Tengu-ji, or Tengu artistry, to describe innovative problem-solving that blends unconventional thinking with disciplined execution. The creature's winged mobility becomes a metaphor for navigating hierarchies, soaring above petty conflicts while remaining grounded in purpose. What makes the Tengu uniquely resonant is their refusal to fit neatly into moral categories. Unlike Western demons who represent pure evil or angels embodying unquestioned virtue, these beings thrive in ambiguity. A single Tengu might spend the morning leading a child lost in the woods to safety, then spend the evening humiliating a corrupt official by turning his prized scrolls into nesting materials. This reflects a profoundly Japanese worldview, that wisdom and folly aren't opposites but intertwined strands of the same rope. Even their famed arrogance carries a constructive edge. Without the confidence to challenge convention, how could society progress? The most compelling evidence of their philosophical depth appears in contemporary psychology. Therapists in Japan have adapted Tengu folklore into narrative therapy techniques, encouraging patients to interview their inner Tengu when confronting self-sabotaging behaviors. A recovering addict might envision their cravings as a Kotengu's whispers, acknowledging the creature's presence while refusing to let it steer their decisions. This approach leverages the Tengu's dual nature, neither suppressing nor surrendering to dark impulses, but engaging with them consciously. Artists and writers continue to mine this rich symbolism. Takashi Murakami's superflat paintings feature Tengu holding smartphones, their elongated noses now scanning social media feeds, a biting commentary on modern vanity. Meanwhile, environmental activists use the creature's forest guardian aspect to promote ecological ethics, framing deforestation as driving the Tengu from their homes. These adaptations prove the archetype's flexibility. Whether as cautionary figure or aspirational ideal, the Tengu evolves without losing its core meaning. At their philosophical heart, these beings embody the most human of struggles, the daily choice between our baser instincts and higher callings. Their legends don't offer easy answers, but something far more valuable: the reminder that growth isn't about eliminating shadows, but learning to fly with their weight. The next time you face an impossible decision, ask yourself, what would the Tengu see that you're missing? That unnerving perspective, both merciless and profoundly wise, is their greatest gift to us. From celestial omens of disaster to divine protectors, from shadowy forest tricksters to revered mentors of warriors, the Tengu's journey through Japanese history is nothing short of astonishing. These winged enigmas began as harbingers of political ruin in ancient chronicles, their very presence enough to send emperors trembling. Yet over centuries they evolved first into mischievous mountain spirits, then disciplined teachers of martial arts, and finally guardians of sacred truths. Their transformation mirrors humanity's own capacity to reinterpret the unknown, to turn fear into fascination and chaos into wisdom. Think of the Tengu as nature's perfect paradox beings who punish arrogance yet demand respect, who disrupt order yet enforce cosmic justice. Their stories resonate because they don't offer easy morals. A Tengu might lead a lost child to safety with one taloned hand while toppling a corrupt lord's fortune with the other. They remind us that growth often comes from discomfort, that the fiercest teachers wear frightening masks, and that even the wildest forces can be harnessed for good. Today, their legacy soars beyond folklore. You'll find them immortalized in anime, video games, and even corporate training seminars, their long noses sniffing out hypocrisy in boardrooms just as they once did in temple halls. They've become environmental mascots, their mythic connection to forests inspiring conservation efforts across Japan. And for those who seek them, the mountains still whisper their presence, whether in the rustle of crow wings at Kurama's shrines or the uncanny chill that descends on Otago's slopes at dusk. So here's an invitation. If you've wandered Japan's misty peaks, have you felt that prickle on your neck, that sense of being watched from the treetops? Maybe you've glimpsed a shadow too swift to be human or heard laughter echoing where no one stood. Share your encounters below, because the Tengu story isn't confined to scrolls and festivals. It's alive in every traveler's tale, every child's wide-eyed question, and every hiker's pause beneath ancient cedars, wondering if the legends might just be true. And if you ever find yourself on a mountain path as the fog rolls in, keep an eye on the high branches, that odd-shaped knot in the pine. It might just be wood. Or perhaps, if the light catches it just right, you'll see the faintest glint of crimson, a reminder that some stories never stop taking flight.